everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We wanted to say a big appreciation to the people who joined us this morning on the Zoom session. We did have a couple of technological issues, so we're re-recording this session for you and for all those who weren't able to make it. Welcome to David Furs from Launch Commercial Solutions.
Hi, Michelle.
Hello,
Hi,
David. Basically today, guys, we're going to take you through 4 different areas, and the idea is to share some case studies and give you some hints and tips that you can take away and implement immediately in your business, and hopefully provide some other areas that will inspire you to come up with new ideas. So let's jump straight in. We're actually going to share the screen and turn off our videos, and then we will catch up with you again at the Q&A section at the end. Here we go. Okay. So what we're finding right now in the marketplace is that business owners are tossing up between whether they should invest in their business and marketing planning and strategy at this stage or not. And the things that we're hearing are, you know, will I get a return on my investment? What if I invest in the wrong thing? Do I really need somebody else to help me with this? All those sort of questions. And we're here to tell you that now is definitely a good time to invest. Look, we all need to be held accountable, and right now we are all quite uncertain. So having somebody there who can give you that strategic business and marketing guidance is really a bonus. So today we're going to talk about 4 areas: planning, people and process, product, price and pipelines, and performance. I'm going to hand over to David now, because there's a few of us who don't know us. And David, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and how we work together.
Sure, Michelle. Thanks a lot. And again, welcome everybody. David Furs from Launch Commercial Solutions. I've been in business now for about 4 years of my own. Before that, I've been Senior Commercial Manager for several organisations, from government through to multinationals. When I was in those roles, I worked out that a lot of businesses made the same mistakes, that they are able to cover them up or recover from them, I should say, when you're in a bigger business. But smaller businesses, not so much because of budgetary constraints or because they don't have enough people there to support them. So the reason I started my business was to help businesses to get on the front foot and not make those mistakes, or at least have a pathway to recovery that is quicker than a do-it-yourself one. And just as a background, I'm a qualified accountant, fellow of CPA Australia, and also have my MBA. So those two combined give me the knowledge and the ability to work with organisations and help them to identify where they want to go. And indeed to help them go beyond that. And working with Michelle works really well with what I do. As you can tell, I'm sort of a financial and procedure based person because of my background. And working on that side of it, and then having Michelle working on the marketing and sales side is sort of working in unison together to help businesses to really go beyond and achieve more than they thought was possible.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, David. And it does work very well because, of course, you can't look at any sort of marketing strategy until you really know what the numbers are, and to then be able to measure your KPIs to make sure that you've got success. So for me, look, I've been running businesses for 16 years now across several different industries. My background's in organizational strategy and strategic HR and marketing. And I've really found that, you know, the move from traditional style marketing into the digital age is really where we sort of sit in our element, and we're able to take all the basics and really, like David said, build those strong foundations for business plus, you know, with the rest of the team, lead generate so that they can actually get the results. And I'll share some of those case studies a little bit later for you. So let's jump straight in. And David, I'll hand over to you to talk about planning.
Thanks, Michelle. Over the past few weeks especially, but sort of before that even, business owners were talking to me about, you know, they're having trouble setting a budget for next year or even doing a business plan. And some of them even said, oh, I'm not going to go in with a plan, we'll just see how we go and see how the market transpires. Now, they've gone down that path because there's a whole heap of unknowns at the moment, and you know, industry has been affected by the pandemic, and we're all aware of that, and some industries more than others. However, going into a year without a plan is fraught with danger because you don't know where you're going. And as the quote says on the screen there, a goal without a plan is just a dream. So if you think, oh yeah, I want to take my business, I want to get back to where I was before, or I want to continue on doing what I've been doing and try to achieve my 5-year plan as I had it, it's not going to work purely because it's a dream because you have no action plan behind it. And as you can see, Control-Alt-Delete, we've had a business reset at the moment. And some people are seeing this as a problem and as they're carrying the corner waiting for others to make the move first. And I think it's a great opportunity for businesses who get on the front foot. So take the lead role and use this as a stepping stone to get your business to where you always wanted it to be. Sometimes we start a business and we start down a path and it's not quite where we wanted to be, but because now we're on this path, we just continue on with that. So this is the time to actually look at that and say, well, what else do I want out of this business and how am I going to get there and what sort of plans? So because of the reset, what's happening now is our whole baseline for our business is gone. So the business plan as we had it is now defunct. It can be thrown away to a degree because it'll still be useful in a couple of years' time. But at the moment, all your assumptions and everything that your business plan is based on has now changed. And you've got to change your plan to make that happen. The traditional way of doing a business plan is, and for those of you who do it on a regular basis will recognise that you normally start with the 5-year vision. And this is because you know where we are currently. So you're saying in 5 years, where do I want to be? And then you drill back to your 3-year vision. Okay, if I want to be there in 5 years, what does my business need to look like in 3 years? And then build back from that and say, okay, what do I need to do in the next 12 months to create that stepping stone to the 3 years and then to the 5 years? Unfortunately, because the baseline has changed, we are now in this position where people are afraid to look to the 5 years. So what I'm sort of proposing is we turn that around and we re-baseline our business. So we look at planning for the next 12 months. What does that look like? So when we're starting now and where do we want to be? And then we work towards the 2 years and then look at our business over 2 years and then over the 5-year term. Where do we want to be? So we still have that 5-year view of our business, but we just do it in reverse order for this year because we've got a re-baseline. So to do that, the same process of business planning comes to fore, which I break down into the think, plan, act strategy. But each of these are different to what I would have taught 6 months ago. All right, in the think strategy, we have to look at now aligning our vision and mission. Where do we want to take our business? You still have that, as I said, that 5-year or that, you know, even 20-year view. What do you want your business to look like in 5 years' time? What's your vision and what's your mission to get there? So what are we providing to our customers? And I'll come back to that in a minute. Excuse me. Then we say, where are we currently? What's our baseline and our starting point? So this is where we are today. We know where we are today. We know what we've done over the pandemic. Some things we've done to try to stay afloat and some changes we've made which we think, oh, they're pretty good, or, you know, they're not so good, whatever it might be. And again, I'll go through that shortly. But where do we want to be in the next 12 months? So we have a starting point and we have the next 12 months, where do we want to be then? And then we have to define what products and services we want to go with. Now, I'm saying that because over the last couple of months, people have incorporated different products or services into their business, which they have never seen before, purely as a survival strategy. So we've seen restaurants that don't have home delivery doing home delivery. And we've seen other businesses, you know, everyone's thinking outside the box and going different paths. We saw a distillery that went from distilling, I think it was vodka or gin, to doing hand sanitizer, because they saw the market was there. But what you have to look at now is what products actually work for me and will work to help me achieve my vision and will make me money, versus the products that you've implemented for the survival strategy that you're going to dispose once we go back to normality, that aren't going to be part of your suite anymore. And I think you have to look at that in a holistic approach and say, we've done this as a stopgap measure. If we want to continue with it, what do we need to do to make sure we have the foundation there to continue that as a product line? And that'd be policies and procedures and everything surrounding that. Then we go into the plan. So, as I said, plan to the 30th of June 2021. Now we're coming up to the end of financial year. It's an ideal time to start to plan for next financial year. So take your plan from today to the end of the year. We've done the gap analysis, which is where you are today versus where you want to be at the end of the 12 months. But what does that gap look like? Document all your assumptions around that. There's going to be heaps. How many people are going to buy from you? You don't know. How many people, if you've got a shop front, will be walking past and walking into you? How many inquiries you get? And how you build up your brand again, depending on how your activity has been over the last 3 months or so. So once you document those assumptions, though, that's your starting point to build the plan, because as the assumptions become less of an assumption and more of reality, you're able to update your plan based on that reality. And then develop up a project plan. So the project plan is about how do you fill that gap? What do you do to bridge that gap between now and that 12-month focus? What type of projects and what type of things do you have to focus on? And that's, I'm not talking about big projects necessarily, but I'm talking about projects around what's our marketing strategy and what is our reporting strategy, and all those type of projects that you want to fit in there. And then in the third phase, we act on that. So what does that look like? We start to develop up our goals, our timeframes, and our budgets. What does it look like? Again, based on the assumptions we made. Now, a lot of people see business plans as being set in concrete, right? You do a business plan and that's what we have to do. Further from the truth than that, you've got to actually make it change with your business. So as your assumptions change around your plan, update your business plan, because that's how you get a working business plan that you can rely upon. So once you've done your goals and your timeframes, you start to develop an action plan and a task list. So this is where you start to say, well, who's responsible for delivering these things? What does it look like? So you might have a goal of increasing sales by 20% by December. What does that look like? How are you going to do that? What type of actions are you going to put in place to make that happen? And who is responsible for those? And then I always say, have a visual wall, and I'll go through that later, but pretty much it's about an accountability structure to make sure that the people who are supposed to be delivering on things are delivering on them, or have a way of getting support and reporting, and people understand the status of everything that's going on. And management reporting, that's really important about all of this, because you want to know your progress. And if you've asked people to be responsible for the delivery of certain things, you want to know where you're at. So having a management reporting process, especially on the progress, but about how the business is performing in general, is quite important, because again, that can show you where your assumptions may have been incorrect. It can help you to mitigate any risks that are currently occurring before they cause too much damage, or it can help you to capitalize on opportunities which are arising, which if you left them and weren't aware, you might miss out on them. And then once you've done the 12-month focus, you repeat the process. So it's very similar. So you go iteration to 2023. So that's 2 years after 2021, obviously. And then you do another iteration to 2025. And that's the timeline that I was talking about earlier. So again, you look at the gap. Where are we currently? Or in this case, it'll be where are we at the start, at the end of this 12 months? And where do we want to be then in 2023? And then where are we at the 2023 and moving on to 2025? Have that gap analysis done. Look at what the gap is. How do we bridge that gap? And make the assumptions around it. So again, you can keep updating and keep recirculating that so it makes sense. And the other thing I'll say about assumptions is a lot of business owners do business plans. If they do business planning, they'll do it for a year and they'll maybe refer to it, but no one does the cross-check to say, okay, let's refresh that, let's keep building on that. People tend to start afresh and go, okay, next year we'll start planning again. And this is a whole iterative process. If you keep on top of your business plan and you keep it realistic by updating the assumptions, that is your building block to build next year's plan and the plan after. So, and build up draft project plans. Again, in this environment we're in currently, it's really hard to plan out to 2025 because there's a lot of uncertainty in your mind, if not in the marketplace. So create a draft project plan, if you want to call it that, because the projects are based on all your assumptions coming true. And again, business and the environment changes all the time. So just keep regenerating that, but keep an eye on those projects and keep an eye on what you need to do to get to that vision that you want for 2025. Yeah, so what we have to do then is develop up our action plans. So to do that, we need to look at setting our goals in the SMART format. So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-driven. So each goal has to have those 5 components in it to make it a more relevant goal to you. Then break down the goals into bite-sized pieces. And this is a standard thing for goal setting, which a lot of people don't do, because you set a goal, and again, I'll use the example, you want to increase your revenue by 20% by December. You know, that sounds like a huge target. And unless you break that down into action plans, how you're actually going to achieve that, you probably won't achieve it, because it'll be more like, oh, geez, I wish, I hope I get to 20%, rather than having a specific action plan, which is allocated to specific people as to be accountable for. It doesn't mean they have to deliver it. It just means that they're accountable to that and they can project manage that themselves. And then a series of actions will make up each goal. So you don't need one action per goal, but what you do need is probably a series of actions, which I'll do this, then I'll do this, then I'll do that. And then at the end of it, this is what we hope, what we're going to achieve. What's our goal to achieve? Without goals, it is really hard to move forward. So again, without a plan, it's a dream. And without goals, you can't move forward, because you start to, again, look at it and think that it's too hard, or, you know, I don't have any way of measuring if I'm moving towards what I've set myself in my plan. So the goals are very important, and it's motivational. When you achieve a goal, when you are able to tick that off, or indeed as you progress towards it, it's motivational, and it will keep you going to want to achieve more and more and more.
Fantastic. So it's so true, particularly in this environment, how David talks about having that project plan and the series of actions. And the same goes when it comes to your marketing strategy. So we can't start on marketing strategy unless we actually know where a client needs to go. And that's where the business planning side is fantastic, because it gives us the numbers. So once we have the numbers, then we are able to work out the strategy and have measurable KPIs. Now, David talked about planning more often rather than not. So for us, we get together with our clients monthly to ensure that our KPIs are being met. We're making sure that our milestones are being reached. And if they aren't, we're adapting and tweaking to make sure that they are. So and then quarterly we check in again so that we can make sure everything is on track. And unless you keep looking at what your marketing is doing for you on a regular basis, you can get to the end of 12 months and go, that didn't work. But in the meantime, you've wasted a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources, and you haven't achieved your goals, as David mentioned. So some people then have asked, but how does this all work? So I just wanted to run you through a client case study here. This particular client we worked with, so David sat with them first and looked at the business plan. And the first financial KPI was that they wanted to get from 4 million to 6 million turnover in 2 years with a 50% gross profit. Some areas within marketing that they wanted to make sure we covered off on were that they wanted to win back some past clients that they had lost to competitors. They obviously wanted to increase their market share in the exhibition and trade show market. They wanted to expand their clientele base into new markets and also increase the average spend per client that was currently coming through the door. And lastly, they wanted to fill their quiet times in their warehouse so that their staff had things to do when the trade show display downtime was happening. So with that, they wanted to increase their fit outs, their signage, and their other areas of the business. So when we did our strategy session, both David and I went along, and we also David asked some other fantastic questions around profitability. And we established that the clients were actually aiming for high-end, big brand customers who, at the end of the day, whilst they spent a lot, their profit margin was not very good at the end of it all, and they were pains in the butt, to be honest. So we realized very quickly that the goal was not to target more of those big whales, but simply to target the mid-range clients who were more profitable, easier to pump through, they were nicer clients, and we could make more money faster because everybody was chasing the big whales. The next area, which was the product mix. So what we realized quickly was that the client wasn't just an exhibition and trade show display stand company. They were actually an organization that provided brand solutions. So we were able to increase the average spend per client by providing vertical products rather than just simple horizontal products. And we showed them how to actually develop the sales process around that with each client. So the average client spend went from potentially 100, 150,000 through to 500,000. And one other area, another question, one of the questions David asked in the beginning was one particular event which was worth 500,000. Once we delved into how profitable it was and the use of staff and resources, etc., we realized that the event wasn't worth it at all. They cancelled it, and luckily enough with the marketing, we were able to replace that business with more profitable business going forward. So we keep talking about the plan. So we're talking about the marketing plan here in order to get the results that we desire. So people say to us, but what's in this plan? Like, how do we know what we need, what actions we need to take, what strategies we need to think about, all of that? So here we are. So the first thing is, who are your ideal clients and how many of each of them do we want? So in the case of that case study, we only wanted one big whale at say 150, 250,000, but the rest we were happy with actually the smaller clients in the $30,000 to $100,000 mark. So we worked out what the numbers were. We looked at all the other areas of the business, and that's how we came up with our plan of how many ideal clients in each space we wanted. So the next thing then was to look at what we are offering. What products and services were we really selling? And it was in this, when I talked about before about the brand solutions, that it wasn't just a matter of selling them a trade show display. We also were able to take that display, turn it into a pop-up outside a shopping center, turn it into an event display to target other clients, and then take it nationally. So this is how we were able to take that product and make it vertical. So it's very important to look at what your products and services are. So then, of course, we want to make sure in the marketing strategy that we're looking at what pipelines we're going to find those ideal clients on. And we've been having a lot of conversations about this lately, particularly when it comes to social media. And it's interesting, guys, because look, Zoom went from 10 million to 200 million users in 1 month, okay? Everybody's online, and if you're not online, I'm sorry, you're missing out. It doesn't matter what business you are operating in. So the next one is, how do we attract them? So that is going through the different strategies of how do we have our ideal clients see us through the touch points, and then where do we take them next? And this is really where people get lost. You know, they might put a LinkedIn post out, for example, and a client sees the article, but then there's no call to action, or the whole point of marketing is to move your clients through the buying cycle faster and giving them all the education and content that they need so they know, like, and trust you quickly, and then they're ready to buy. So the whole point of the strategy is to show that process of how we take them through. So then lastly, and most importantly, when they do convert, use our product or service, what are we doing then to retain them or sell them some more? And usually, particularly in our bigger businesses, this is where we start with the people who've got larger databases, who haven't contacted them for a long time. You know, you work so hard to build a client. It's so much easier, as you know, to retain them rather than find a new one. So it's important to have those different retention strategies to keep in touch, newsletters, invite to events, share articles of interest, call them up, introduce them to other businesses, and all of those sort of things. So important that you cover off on all those areas in the plan in depth so you know exactly where you're going. So I'll hand over David now to talk about people and processes.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, people and processes are quite important because this is about how you create productivity in your business. Now, productivity is defined as the effectiveness of effort measured as output relative to time. And that includes accuracy and quality. And what I mean by that is you can improve the output and the quality of your products without adding to your cost base. So improve your bottom line just by utilizing what you have, the team that you already have in place, and then spending some time to be able to mold them, to enable them to be the best they can be by aligning to you and by aligning to your business. So Parkinson's law, for those who haven't heard this before, work expands to fill the time available for completion. And that is, if you've got a week deadline, it'll take you a week to do it. If I want something by close of business tomorrow, you'll do your best to get it done at least by tomorrow. So if you don't have a structure around time frame, around what has to be delivered and by when, by whom and all that, then what you're doing is you're enabling your team to not focus on what you're expecting them to deliver upon, and they'll deliver upon it in their own time frame, or indeed in a time frame that they think is acceptable. So to influence productivity, what we need to do is it's twofold. Number one is your people influence your productivity, obviously through their actions and through how they deliver your products, and then also your processes and your systems to support your people. So those two work in unison. They're not really independent, but what you have to do is make sure your business is set up to be as productive as it can be utilising that model. So when we talk about processes, process and culture within the people side of it, we're looking at, first of all, your teams have to understand why. Why are you in business? What is your vision? And what is your mission for your business? That way they're aligned to your thinking and they know how they interrelate with that and you know, how they impact on that and support that. They understand how they fit in, again, how they support your vision, what their specific contribution is. So if they're the receptionist, or if they're the accountant, or if they're the person on the production line, how are they contributing to your final outcome? And people need to know that, because then they understand their piece, you know, where they fit in that puzzle. Also, understanding the interrelationships between areas within an organisation. I worked for a multinational who were having major trouble in achieving their KPIs on asset maintenance delivery. So they would accept the calls. There was a call centre that accepted calls in about reactive maintenance. So something broke down, someone rings up and says, "Hey, I need this fixed." The call centre would log the call in the database, and then a flag would go to the actual delivery unit, or the people with the tradespersons, and they would then pick it up. The reason that we weren't delivering on the KPI is that there was rework, because there was two critical pieces of information that the call centre people didn't pick up that were required by the maintenance people. So they would have to then ring up the client again, who may be available, may not be available, and try to get these pieces of information which they needed to complete their tasks. So, for example, you know, if it was an urgent request, it needed to be acted upon within the first 2 or 3 hours, I think was the KPI. And of course, by the time they've rung around, they weren't able to deliver on that, and it might have been a day later. So, you know, we lost that money. So it was a simple fix, but because the two areas, the call centre and the trades, hadn't been talking, neither of the call centre didn't know that the trades needed this piece of information, and the tradespeople just thought the call centre wasn't doing their job properly. The fix was pretty much just making a mandatory field in the system where the call was logged. And then all of a sudden we're achieving our KPI. And that's what I mean by interrelationships. How do each of the divisions relate to each other, and how do they rely on each other to deliver? And then having a sense of belonging. So your team has to have a sense of belonging. Again, they understand how they fit in and you know, how it all interrelates. But the other side is they have to know that they're belonging to your organisation, that they're appreciated, and that anything they say and everything they do is valued by management, by the organisation in general, and so they'll continue to be motivated to deliver for you. In the people side of it, again, looking at the people and processes, to help define the people and help them to fill out all that, make sure they know how they fit in, and make sure they know how they fit in, where the organisation is going and how they contribute to it. We need to have role descriptions for each role, and this not only creates a bit of stability for the person themselves knowing what they're responsible for, but it also helps with defining who is responsible for which tasks, and how they deliver on those. And again, defining the tasks. So we work within the role descriptions to define the tasks as to what is required. We make sure that people understand what they're required to do, and make sure that, you know, we're available for team meetings, but also one-on-ones if required. So team meetings are important, again, because your team does their job and they do it very well. And because they're so close to their job, they know where improvements can be made. They can make suggestions. It doesn't mean they have to be accepted, but just having that value where they're able to come to a meeting and say, hey, I think if we did it, we could do this better, or I think Joe should be responsible for this instead of me, purely because they're there already, or, you know, all this type of stuff. So having a look at it from a person on the front line will help out, and will help you to improve your processes and procedures. And then in your systems and processes, make sure that you've got formats around that. So having checklists for jobs so that you know that everything is done. If you say a job is vacuuming the floor, which floor, where is it bound by, what are you trying to achieve out of that? You know, have them very much a tick box that they can really know how their job is going, not to the micro level, but to a point where people can understand the role. So if it's handed to someone else to do that job, they know exactly what's required. And having policies and procedures. So understanding what the behaviour policy is, understanding if you have a phone etiquette of how to answer the phone, or it has to be answered in 3 rings, and just looking at everything around your organisation. How long is month end? So when does the finances have to be completed by? Day 10, day 5 after month end? When does the sales team have to finalise their sales within? So it might be from contact to sale. How long is that? So you look at all these policies and procedures and KPIs indeed, because that will help you to be more effective.
So true, David. Thank you for that. And it's interesting because particularly when it comes to marketing and we talk about people and resources, we really need to look at what resources do you have on hand that can actually carry out the marketing function. And do you have the skills, or is there that gap in skills, and therefore you need to outsource the function or bring on new staff who can do the job? The biggest challenge that I see for a lot of businesses is that the poor PA or the secretary or sometimes the sales manager, they're the ones who end up having to do their job and also do the job of a marketing team. And that's why it's so important, this quote, that, you know, whatever you focus on is what you get. So if we go back to David talking about the role descriptions, you know, we can't expect people to just jump in and do things half-heartedly, because you're never going to get the results that you desire. So it's important that, you know, in the case that I was talking about before, you know, we worked with the sales director very closely, because at the end of the day, we were bringing in the leads and his team had to convert them into sales. So we made sure that we met with him monthly, and then we reported to the directors on a quarterly basis. So we got the plan, we worked out the process, we carried it out, we measured, tracked, adapted, and repeated. So one of the biggest things that client said in their testimony was that it was fantastic that they had the resource, knowing in the background that the marketing was happening, everything was being done that needed to be done, and they were getting those reports so that they knew that they were achieving what they wanted to. So David, I'll pass over to you to talk about products, price, and pipelines.
Thanks, Michelle. With products and services, and I mentioned it before, that, you know, a lot has been changing over the last 3 months at least, and there's been some stopgap measures, and there's been some products which you may have implemented which you weren't intending on doing, and now think, oh, hang on, I could continue this. This is going better than I thought. So you just need to know a couple of things. One is, what products are you continuing with? Again, you've implemented these new products. Going back, you know, there was delivery for restaurants who haven't delivered before. There are people who historically business to business in the food delivery area, which are now going into business to consumer, purely because all the restaurants have shut down, or there's one where the exports have shut down because of the restricted flying, international travel. So what you have to look at is what products that you've implemented are the stopgap measure, which you're not going to continue with, and what other products are you going to continue with because you think that they're worth it and they're helping you to contribute to achieving your vision. So have a look at currently, what is your highest volume product? Now, business owners should know what the highest volume product is. So what I mean by that is, what is the product that you sell the most of? And is it profitable? They're the two things you have to consider with that. So, you know, and the other side of that is, what is your highest margin product? What product you may not sell a lot of, but that's the one that has the highest margin or highest impact to your bottom line, positive impact on your bottom line to achieve. And that's two key components that as business owners you should understand. And then the third thing is, what product is your business reliant on to survive? Okay, is it the highest volume product that you need that to continue the turnover, and then the highest margin is great, but that's really the cream? Or is it the other way around, and how do you capitalize on that? So you should understand those. And the final thing, which and this one is probably one of my things that concerns me, is a lot of businesses don't know their break-even points. So do you know from your operating costs, we have all the salaries and the fixed costs that go with running a business, what revenue turnover, what do you need to sell to break even in your business? And if you don't know that, my recommendation is go and find that out as quickly as you can, because that way you will have your starting point for where we are now. This is what I have to sell to keep my business afloat, and everything else then helps you to grow, to develop that further.
Fantastic. And David, you're so correct, because, you know, unless we actually know which products from a marketing point of view that we want to promote, then how are we going to work out the best pipelines to promote them on? So we want to work out those high margin or, you know, high volume products, and then we want to pick the right channels to attract the ideal clients on, to make sure they come through the door, move them through your sales funnel, move them through the buying cycle, so then they buy from you. So here I have, now with that particular client I was talking about before with the case study, I just wanted to run you through the pipelines that we set up for them. Now, remember, they wanted to go from 4 million to 6 million in 2 years. Now, utilizing these particular pipelines, we were able to get them from 4 million to 5.3 million in 8 months. Now, the faster you, and of course, we're constantly checking in with the client. It was at this stage where David actually went in and said, okay, you know, we need, well, he'd already talked about how they needed to start planning for more staff. And, you know, looking at the warehouse setup, all those sort of things. So this is where it's so important to make sure that, you know, the numbers and that side of it is matching the actual marketing strategy side of it. So in this case, we set up all these different pipelines because we wanted to be seen on as many channels as possible quickly to move those potential clients through that buying cycle faster. So in this case, we used LinkedIn Business for updates and to gain credibility. And we used LinkedIn personal profiles in order to connect personally with the potential clients that we wanted to deal with, interact with them, etc., and then get them off LinkedIn into our email database. We used Facebook, and it's interesting because these guys thought that Facebook was not really a channel that they thought their clients were on. We actually ran a $50 Facebook ad campaign for libraries, and it ended up being worth 250 grand worth of business. So, you know, it's about using the channel in the right manner, in a way that ideal client will engage and will take action. We also used the monthly segmented newsletters. So we broke down all the different types of markets and made sure that we spoke in interesting languages and also things that those particular segments were interested in, not just waffling on. We used the website blogs and LinkedIn articles to show expertise, to educate. We used case studies as well. And then the interesting one was the organic keywords and hashtags. Now, the company, we noticed when we looked at their numbers, was spending $800 a month on SEO, search engine optimization. And when we actually did our research, we found that they were, you know, they weren't ranking for the right keywords that people were actually searching for. So we were able to get rid of the SEO and still raise them by using organic keywords. So that is an option. Lastly, of course, we want Google to find us. So Google My Business was another reason to get in front of people and in front of Google. And we also created and had a bit of fun with an augmented reality brochure, which we did that because we wanted to be a bit different in the marketplace. We wanted to stand out, and we also wanted to show that we were the leaders currently in this particular area. So it's all fantastic to do all of this, but what is very important is that we measure our performance. So I'll pass over to you, David, to talk about that.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Business metrics are quite important, and a lot of people think metrics are just about finances, but they're more than that. It's about your entire business. Anything in your business should be able to have at least one key metric surrounding it, and that's everything from every role to every position to every department, and as you drill up within your different levels of your organisation. And it's really important to do that because you can't manage what you don't measure. And when I say that is, again, you can't react to things. If you don't know you've got an issue that's starting to chisel away at your profit line, you can't manage it. If you have an opportunity that presents itself and you don't know it exists, then it's an opportunity lost. So you've got to be able to look at things and have a measurement tool against it and know how to use those measurements. Make sure they're relevant to you. So I'll ask a couple of questions just to think about. So are you running efficiently, and how do you know? So some people think, oh yeah, I'm running efficiently, but that's more of a gut feel than anything else. So how do you know? Think how you can answer these questions in your business. So which parts of your business are performing the best, and which parts are the worst performing? Again, if you know that, you're able to take the opportunity or put some effort in to improving your worst performing areas. Are you leaving money on the table? And in saying that, I mean about sales processes, or about negotiations or anything like that, or even when you're talking about cost base and talking with suppliers. Are you leaving money on the table because you don't identify that you need to focus on them? And are you missing any opportunities that you may otherwise have, but you just don't know they exist? Are you wasting money? Is money just going out the door? And do you measure and manage all of that? And that's really the crux of it, is to know your business the best, you have to have some sort of metrics around everything you do, and those metrics have to be relevant to everything you do. There's no point measuring how many rings it takes to answer a phone if it's not relevant to you because it diverts to a mobile and someone will answer it anyway, So unless it's time driven, unless it's complex, you need to have something that will drive positive behavior for your business. So business metrics are quantifiable measures that businesses use to track, monitor, and assess the success or failure of various processes. And I think I've gone through that. Is, you just have to have a quantifiable measure. It has to be a number or some sort of relevance to you. But again, it's not necessarily financial. Sure, financial measurement is about how much cost of goods you have or how much profit you're driving, but it goes beyond that. So why are metrics important? It baselines what you want. It baselines where you want it to be. So with every metric, you should have a tool. How do you measure that? What's the yardstick? Where do you want it to be in life? and it gives you then the metric will show you whether you're below or above, and then you know where to target your efforts. It gives you the targets to aim for, again, where you want to take your metrics and how you want to take your business. It highlights under and over performance, and this is where it becomes an identification of where you need to put your focus. It's not a punitive thing saying you didn't achieve your target, therefore it shouldn't be seen as the penalty to people. What it should be seen as is a guiding light to say this is where I need to be. Oh, I'm not there yet, and highlight that to the management team or highlight that to the entire organisation so that they can focus effort on. So you can do a bit of a root cause analysis and say, why aren't we achieving that? And what can we do to fix that issue? Or why is that performing so well? What can we do to double down and make it even better for our organisation? So what metrics are right for you? Well, it depends on your organisation. Key metrics are all about what drives your cost base, what drives your organisation forward. So it includes both financial and non-financial targets. It's a focus on key business drivers. So again, number of sales calls might be a key driver for you. Number of leads that convert to customers. Number of people on the street versus number who come in. Average spend per head. There are so many metrics that you can do, but it's all dependent on what business you are in. And what metrics do as well is they motivate what will motivate the right behavior for you. What I've seen before is the sales team has a target, for example, has a metric around them to say they have to achieve, for every inquiry they get, they have to achieve 75% conversion rate or something like that. So what they would do would be they discount. So they get the conversion rate because they've discounted it to and all of a sudden then you're impacting on your profit line, because to achieve their sales KPI, they've actually impacted on the profit. So you've got to look at the interrelationships between everything and make sure you are motivating and driving the right behaviour. One other thing is, once you've got your metrics in place, create a scoreboard. And I mentioned this briefly earlier about having a visual wall. But if you create a scoreboard where everyone can see where everyone's up to, so you put it up where everyone can see it. So it becomes, you walk past it, everyone can see the status. It's updated on a regular basis, and people then can talk to it, to the visual wall. And we'll just go to that next slide. Can you put up all the things, Michelle? So we start on the vision board with the vision mission. And the vision and mission is this is how we motivate the team, and it sort of encapsulates everything which I've been talking about throughout this presentation. You start with the vision and mission so people know where you're heading and how you're getting there. You have your key business metrics so that people can see what metrics you're being measured by and the status of each, how you're performing, and what areas do need that support and assistance. Again, it's not a punitive judgment. It's more about how can we react to it to either take the opportunity or to limit the exposure if it's negative. What does your business plan say? So put up, again, your business plan. Where do you want to go in year one? What are your key deliverables? What are your key projects? And then project and action plan after that. What projects are there? What is the status of each project? What are the actions that are being taken? And who is responsible for those, or more importantly, who's accountable for those? It doesn't mean that they're responsible for it, because their teams may be responsible for delivering it, but one individual needs to be accountable. And again, that's not a punitive thing. It's just making sure that it's not, oh, finance does that, but what does finance mean? And everyone's pointing the fingers at each other, right? There's one person who's accountable to it. And if you put that in line, so as it sort of stands there on a wall, which is visual, and you have an individual one for each of your departments, so everyone can see where you're up to. And as you go into the department level, obviously it gets a bit more granular. At the organisation level, it's more of a higher level. But what it does is it gives people that motivation. It shows where the business is going. It shows the positive and the negative about how you're performing, and then it helps people to get motivated to give their suggestions or to put in extra effort or to help you to drive that performance forward.
And so following on from that, really marketing sits under those key business metrics as part of those, because we want to make sure that the marketing team is doing what they need to do to bring in the right relationships, to bring in the leads, to bring in the people through the sales funnel, so that when they are ready to buy, they can hand them over to the sales team to convert. And sometimes we find that there's a bit of confusion as to what marketing is supposed to do and what sales is supposed to do. So it's important that we're very clear with those metrics and we're measuring and tracking and adapting as we go. It's interesting because most of our clients, particularly the bigger ones, by the time they come to us, one of the first questions they say is, oh, I feel like I've been ripped off. I'm sick of getting ripped off. Or marketing is fluffy, or, you know, they promised me the world and didn't deliver. So I mentioned that SEO company before where the client was paying $800 per month. And, you know, when I asked the client, why are you doing this? They said, oh, you know, they send us that monthly report. We don't understand it anyway. And they said, this is what we have to do. So it's really important as a business owner that you're asking the right questions and you're understanding what's actually going on, because otherwise you're going to end up getting burnt. So the question is, how do I know what to measure and where my leads are actually coming from? So I just want to run through a couple of things here. So I spoke to a client yesterday, interestingly enough, who also felt like they'd just been ripped off, because we said to them they were paying $2,800 a month for a post fortnightly on Facebook, which is just madness. And then most of the time that post wasn't relevant to anything anyway. However, when I asked the client, well, you know, what were your expectations or outcomes, or how many new clients did you want to receive from this campaign, etc., they couldn't answer the question. So it's really, really important that from a business point of view, you first know what you're looking for. Mind you, the marketing company should have asked that question, and they generally never do. But, you know, as a business owner, you need to know where to start first, because otherwise you cannot measure. So let me talk about some different areas that we look at on a weekly basis with our clients to make sure that we are on track and our different marketing pipelines are actually working. So you've got these different areas here. Now, when it comes to Google Analytics, that relates to your website, and it is just wonderful because it gives you all the information that you need to tell you whether things are working. And I'm amazed how many businesses don't have this set up. Now, this company is a dog training company, and so they were set up for e-commerce. So it actually tracks the spend as people purchase. So in this case, obviously the top one is your revenue, that we're looking at the conversion rate and your average sale. Now we look at this every single week because we know what the break-even point is, and we want to make sure that each week we're hitting that break-even point. When you look at what are your top selling products, this is very important, because once again, that break-even point, if we find that suddenly they're dropping below that, we've got to look at what areas can we now potentially run ads for. Can we, you know, focus on with our social media, or, you know, with the email newsletters, etc. Where do we need to concentrate to actually up the revenue where it's needed? So this is beautiful, the top selling products, because at this time we were running a Facebook ad. So we wanted to make sure it was working. So the fact that we were actually selling the product, obviously of the leads and the harnesses, told us that our spend versus return was working well. But it also then sometimes shows us that there are certain products that we wouldn't potentially think would be big sellers. So you'll find now during this time of COVID where people are now at home, and it's interesting because it's only now we're seeing a massive jump in you know, the home products, like the Fubla Bluetooth thing on the bottom, that's like a little thing you put food in and play with the dogs. All those areas now we're promoting because that's what people are needing. So it's so important to, this is why you are constantly looking at your metrics. And as I said, we look at them weekly because things are changing, particularly now, so fast. The other important area is where are you acquiring your audience traffic? So that's your one on the right there. Now, these guys were also paying for search engine optimization, and we ended up saying cut it out because their organic search, as you can see at the top there, was giving them such a massive return already. So why waste money when you're already getting the returns? The social and direct were obviously paid advertising, and the social posting on Facebook. We were running some Google ads at the time. We've actually cut those since because the returns, particularly in this environment, it's just not worth it. And referral was through Facebook as well. But your Google Analytics will give you all that information that you need. This one is one of the most important pieces of information that we look at, is your new versus returning, the behavior of clients when they come to your website. Because we find that, you know, 70 to 85% of business actually comes from returning visitors rather than new visitors. And the reason for that is because I mentioned before, it takes 5 to 20 touch points with a client coming to see you before they are ready to buy. So it's very, very important that you are retargeting clients, whether it be through Facebook advertising, whether it be through newsletters, texts, phone calls, flyers, if you want to go traditional, or by them seeing your social media posts, you messaging them directly, all of those sort of things. But returning customers are the key, and it really is an area that people just don't think about, but very important. So it's all good. I see a lot of marketing agencies talking about leads, and that's really wonderful, but I don't care how many leads you get through the door. What I care about is how many of those leads convert. So what's important here is tracking where people are in the buying cycle and how many times you have touch pointed them. It's interesting because, let me just give you an example. You might find that you put out a post on Facebook and you notice someone new likes it. And then you might see on LinkedIn that you have that same person likes it. And then suddenly that person downloads your lead magnet pop-up on your website. And so you start to see this person liking popping up everywhere. And suddenly you realize that it's been, then they jump on your newsletter and they get a couple of newsletters. And before you know it, you realize they're up to 7 touch points. So now is a good time to actually touch base with that client, because you can be assured that they're starting to already know, like, and trust you. So it never hurts at that point. Then it becomes a warm lead. Another way that you can tell is through your newsletters. If your open rate is above 23%, you're doing very well. This is actually an accounting firm of ours that is very busy at the moment. But what you want to look at on this is your click-through rates. Go and have a look at what people are actually clicking on, and it will tell you which piece of the marketing collateral that you put in the newsletter is working the best. So what I used to do with my underwear business, I was very naughty, is I would have a look at which ladies had clicked through and opened my email several times. Why? Because they obviously wanted that product. So I was very sneaky and then would pick up the phone and say, "Oh, Jenny, you popped into my head," which she didn't really. But of course I love them all. And then Jenny would say, "Thank God you've rung, I've been too busy." And I would take the order over the phone. So this is why, you know, this is where you could be doing a whole lot of marketing, but you're not actually getting to the conversion stage because you're not realizing that somebody is a warm lead. When I keep talking about SEO, I wanted to share this website with you. It's one of the most amazing websites when it comes to search engine optimization, because you can put your website in there, you can put your competitor's website in there, and you can actually see how many people are searching specific words per month. So for example, we've just taken on a new client who does luxurious stays for executive rentals. And she was using the word luxurious stays. Now, nobody is searching that. And we realized that people were searching short stays, and they were actually searching home away from home, 1,900 people a month. So, of course, what we're going to do now is we're going to start using that hashtag, and we're going to start seeing where she ranks for that and keep an eye on that. So measuring, tracking all those metrics. So when people say marketing is fluffy, marketing is not fluffy. You can measure everything. But the most important thing when you do measure is that you do something with it. So those of us this morning who actually jumped on, we've got a special offer for you. I'll mention it here, but we really appreciated you joining us, and particularly when it came to our horrible technology issues. So we will email you with that special offer. So we're going to jump back on with our cameras. David, I'll get you to jump back on. Yep. And we thought we'd just finish with a couple of questions that our lovely people who jumped on this morning had, and go through those. So one of the questions was, I've got 4 avatars, so which one do I approach first? So David, can you just tell us what your thoughts were on that?
Yeah, which one to approach first is a great question, because you know, it's very nebulous. But what you have to look at is the products that they're buying from you, and also which avatar is the most profitable for you, because that would be the one that I would target first, because obviously that helps you get money through the bank, and then you can start to expand it out to the 2nd and 3rd and 4th avatar. So you should be ranking them as to the easiest to serve, but also the most profitable.
Fantastic. And I would agree when you say the easiest to serve, because the other question that I would say is how accessible are they to attract at the lowest cost as well. So, you know, if they're a business to consumer, you might find right now that they're a lot easier to get in touch with, particularly in this environment, versus a business to business who potentially isn't going to spend. So that was a very good question that we had. And then we had some other ones about metrics and things, but we've pretty much covered that today in our presentation. So I will go ahead and say thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, David, for joining us and giving us your wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone.
Fabulous. And of course, at any time, if you'd like to contact us, we're available, and we always are open for a conversation if you need it. But otherwise, we wish you all the best, and we'll see you on our next webinar or session.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.